The COVID pandemic had a real dramatic effect on daily life, not only in France but across Europe. Lockdowns forced restaurants and cultural venues like theatres and museums to close too. Life is slowly returning to normal, but the economic recovery has come at a price, with the government digging deep to support businesses through the crisis. Theo Leggett reports now from Strasbourg.
The Maison Camarzel restaurant occupies one of the most famous medieval buildings in Strasbourg. Inside, chefs are getting ready for the lunchtime rush. This place has always been very popular with tourists who bring in much needed income. But at the height of the COVID pandemic, it had to close. And when it reopened, tourist traffic had disappeared.
The restaurant was open, but we still missed our tourists, our visitors. That's a restaurant that takes a lot of groups as well, mainly from Asia, for example. So you can imagine that those groups were just not here for the last 2 years and a half.
The Maison Camarzel survived through a time when many other restaurants went out of business, and tourists are now returning. That isn't just good news for restaurants. The smiles are returning as well over at the Strasbourg National Theatre, where tickets for tonight's performance have been selling well. Audiences initially seemed reluctant to come back, but now that's changing.
The COVID crisis came as a huge shock for France's cultural sector. This theatre, for example, was empty. These seats were not occupied for more than a year. Now things are getting back to normal and the crowds are returning, but that doesn't mean there aren't still severe challenges ahead.
There are certainly challenges, mainly how to rebuild in a lasting way. We learned during the crisis that the public makes a choice to come to us, but over the past couple of years they've learned to enjoy other things. So we have to work extra hard to make sure they maintain their interest in what we do.
Restaurants, theatres and museums were heavily supported by state funding during the crisis. Their reopening's been a major factor in the country's economic recovery. But to ensure that recovery lasts, France has also committed to a massive investment programme. It'll focus on areas such as clean energy and green public transport projects.
The sectors most affected by the pandemic crisis was industry, construction, tourism, cultures. So it was the main focus in the short run. But with this long-run public investment, other activities will benefit.
The COVID recovery has already cost France dearly. Public finances are under strain. In the run-up to the election, all the candidates set out their recipes for future spending. Now those that remain have to convince the public that the delicacies on offer won't come with an unaffordable bill. Theo Leggett, BBC News, Strasbourg.